Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us here for this special day of remembrance. My name is Lieutenant Colonel Lyle Holbrook, Commanding Officer, 400 Tactical Helicopter Squadron, and I will be your MC for today's ceremony. Sunnybrook acknowledges our campuses are located on the treaty territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and ancestral and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, Ojibwe, Chippewa, and Huron-Wendat First Nations. Now, please stand if able for our national anthem sung by Mr. Scott Newlands. It's my pleasure at this time to introduce the President and CEO of Sunnybrook Health Sciences Centre, Dr. Andy Smith.
Lieutenant Colonel Holbrook, honored veterans, family members, special guests, staff, volunteers, and members of our community. It is my pleasure to welcome you on behalf of the 12,000 staff, physicians, volunteers, students, and Board of Trustees at Sunnybrook Health Sciences Centre. My name is Andy Smith. I'm the President and CEO of Sunnybrook. The Sunnybrook Veterans Centre is proudly home to nearly 300 of Canada's war veterans. It is the largest veterans centre in the country. Sunnybrook officially opened as a military hospital on June the 12th, 1948, the start of a long tradition of dedicated care for our country's war veterans. Staff at the Veterans Centre pride themselves on continuing this tradition as they provide specialized, compassionate, and resident-focused care to our war heroes. At this time of year, we commit to the importance of reflection and remembrance. After this past year, there is only more of that needed than ever. It's been a challenging time worldwide, and in particular, this past year for Canadians, as we faced not only the ongoing challenges of an international pandemic, but also the grim discoveries at former residential schools and the legacy of what that meant for Indigenous people. As a veterans hospital in particular, we have been learning more about the experiences of Indigenous veterans in history, and I wish to briefly share some of that with you today. First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people have a long tradition of military service to Canada. Many volunteered to serve despite the challenges they faced overseas and at home, including traveling long distances from remote communities to enlist, learning a new language, and coping with racism against them. Both men and women enlisted, serving as soldiers, nurses, and in other roles. Many served with distinction, winning medals and bravery in action. After the war, Indigenous people returned home to face continued discrimination and displacement. Some veterans lost their status as a result of being away from the reserve for more than 4 years, which was a provision of the Indian Act at that time. Many were denied access to soldier settlement schemes, and some even had land appropriated by the government to give to returning non-Indigenous veterans. Today, Indigenous people continue to proudly serve in Canada's armed forces. We continue to learn through history in order to shape a better future for all Canadians. And we look to our veterans for inspiration as they have faced many challenges in their lifetimes, with the most recent being their courageous spirit throughout this pandemic. Today, we remember the struggles of each veteran, the struggles that they endured for the sake of our freedom. We acknowledge that some veterans also faced various forms of discrimination in order to serve their country, and that fight didn't end when they returned from the war. As veterans of the Second World War, the Korean War, and the Cold War, our residents served their country, and their sacrifices shall never be forgotten. We pause to remember all of our veterans, living and fallen, and those currently serving in the Canadian Armed Forces, for they are also in our hearts and our prayers today, lest we forget. Thank you.
Now we have the pleasure of hearing veteran resident Robert Chartres recite the famous poem by Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae in Flanders Fields.
In Flanders Fields, the poppies blow. Between the crosses, row on row. That marks our place, and in the sky, the larks are still bravely singing, fly. Scarce heard, but amid the guns below. Nous sommes les morts. Il y a quelques jours encore, nous vivions, sentions l'aube, avons vu le coucher du soleil. Nous aimions, étions aimés. Et maintenant, nous reposons dans les champs de Flandre. Take up our quarrel with the pole. To you, from failing hands, we throw the torch. Be used to hold it high. If he breaks faith with us who die, we shall not sleep. Though poppies grow in Flanders Fields.
At this time, I now invite Chaplain Jim Huth to give the invocational prayer.
Faithful God of the ages, we give you thanks for the gift of life, which is our greatest treasure and opportunity. And in that spirit, we remember those who in the service of Canada offered that gift for the benefit of all. Today, we commit ourselves to remember always those who gave in full measure of their devotion and courage. Stir within the hearts of all Canadians humility and gratitude for those who shared a selfless and courageous resolve to ensure that our land and the world live in freedom and peace. May we never take these blessings for granted. So please stir within the hearts of all Canadians humility and gratitude for those who shared the goodness of life. We also remember those who continue to serve our country at home and abroad. In that spirit of your ever-faithful love, O God of peace, our Remembrance Day service may be one which we acknowledge and show how much we love our country and how we love one another. And may that love urge us forward to seek a pathway together for lasting peace reconciliation, and justice for all. We ask this in your holy name. Amen.
At this time, Dr. Jocelyn Charles, the medical director here at the Sunnybrook Veterans Center, will read today's lesson.
Show us your unfailing love, O Lord, and grant us your salvation. I listen carefully to what God the Lord is saying, for he speaks peace to his faithful people. But let them not return to their foolish ways. Surely his salvation is near to those who fear him. So our land will be filled with his glory. Unfailing love and truth have met together. Righteousness and peace have kissed. Truth springs up from the earth, and righteousness smiles down from heaven. Yes, the Lord pours down his blessings. Our land will yield its bountiful harvest.
In the interest of safety for all, you can see that the wreaths have been laid in front of the podium today. Sylvia Brackvogel, Operations Director for the Veterans Center, and Dr. Dan Cass, Executive Vice President and Chief Medical Executive, will be announcing the memorial wreaths that honor our veterans and the sacrifices that they've made.
The United States Consulate, Toronto. On behalf of the Government of Canada, Rob Oliphant, Member of Parliament for Don Valley West. Veterans Affairs Canada. On behalf of the people of Don Valley West, Rob Oliphant, Member of Parliament. On behalf of the people of Don Valley West, Kathleen Wynne, Member of Provincial Parliament. On behalf of the City of Toronto, City Councillor Jay Robinson. World War I veterans. World War II. Korea veterans. Merchant Navy. Afghanistan War veterans. Women's Armed Forces.
Royal Canadian Legion, Ontario Command. Army, Navy, and Air Force veterans in Canada. Royal Canadian Legion, Tri-District DEF. Canadian Forces College. 32 Canadian Forces Health Services Centre. 400 Tactical Helicopter Squadron. The War Amps of Canada. Sunnybrook Health Sciences Centre. Toronto Paramedic Services. Wives and widows and children.
It's now my pleasure to introduce Dr. David Shergold, an attending physician here at the Sunnybrook Veterans Center, to pass along official greetings.
Honored veterans and families of those past and present, on behalf of my colleagues and our care teams here in the Sunnybrook Veterans Center, in your home, we stand in gratitude and respect for all those who have fallen in service and duty to their country. We honor their sacrifice in war and in peace. At the official opening of this hospital in 1948, Prime Minister William Lyon Mackenzie King said, "Sunnybrook Hospital symbolizes the sacrifices made by those members of the armed forces whom this hospital aims to serve and seeks to honor." Sunnybrook has served veterans in World War I and currently World War II, Korean War, Afghanistan War, Cold War, including our peacekeepers and allied veterans. Today we wear our poppies over our hearts in remembrance of past sacrifices made in service to Canada and its allies. Every day at Sunnybrook, our medical records are marked with a poppy in recognition of veterans in our care. We honor those who bravely fought for our freedom. They fought tyranny and oppression for the peace we have today. We pay tribute to all those we have lost. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. Over this last year and a half, we have been fighting another battle. You, our veterans, have shown your bravery and determination to fight fear with courage. You've been separated from your families, and your families isolated from you, as we confront the invisible and the deadly enemy of this global pandemic. I stand proudly representing our care teams to express from the bottom of our hearts the impact you have made on us during this very distressing time. We have been truly inspired by our veterans and their families. We have learned from your example. You have leaned on one another, cared for us, and shown frontline leadership. We have been united with you in our mission and successful by your persistent grit. Whilst Remembrance Day calls to mind those lost in battle for our freedom, on this special day, we give thanks to you for your courage, your kindness, and your camaraderie. During COVID vaccinations, our unit was to give Mr. John Boyd his second jab. He's a veteran that just turned 108 years old. I said to Mr. Boyd, "Are you ready?" He gave me a big smile. He said, "Doc, are you ready? This is not my first pandemic, you know." We have many centenarians here in Sunnybrook. In fact, Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth must be wondering, as she's sending so many signed official congratulatory photos to those over 100 years old. The average age of our veterans in World War II is 97. And for many others eager to sign up in 1939, a bit before their 18th birthday, while they're over 100 now. We have had not only professional relationships with you and your families, but deeply personal ones. Those relationships have touched each member of our care teams and inspired us in our work. We have witnessed your compassion to one another. As a Royal Canadian Navy veteran myself, senior service of course, I have been amazed at how the Army and the Air Force get along, not to mention how the Merchant Navy tolerates everyone. We're all in this together. During this pandemic, we have sung together, prayed together, and laughed often in the face of fear and uncertainty. Despite your battle-scarred past, and during this time in your life, your spirit has carried us. Words we've heard you sing many times before exemplify that character. From Vera Lynn's "We'll Meet Again," keep smiling through, just like you always do, till the blue skies drive the dark clouds far away. We respect the past, are inspired by today, and hope for tomorrow. Thank you to all the veterans who have served and inspired us to serve with your steadfast example.
Thank you, Dr. Shergold. Now we have the pleasure of hearing a reading of an adaptation of a Litany of Remembrance. It will be recited today by veteran residents Brenda Reed and Susie Stone.
We remember them in the rising of the sun and in its going down. We remember them in the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter. We remember them in the opening of buds and in the rebirth of spring. We remember them in the rustling of the leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember them. In the beginning of the year and in its end, we remember them.
When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember them. When we have lost all hope and long to find our way, we remember them as they stood together. When we have joys we yearn to share, we remember them. In all we do, we remember them. So long as we live, they too shall live, for they are now a part of us, and we shall always remember them.
Thank you, Brenda and Susie. In a moment, we'll be paying our compliments by the colors. Last Post will be played by Kevin Major. The Lament will be played by Corporal Eric Denowden of 400 Squadron, followed by a moment of silence, then Rouse, played by Kevin Major. I invite you to stand now, if able, to pay our compliments to the fallen with these selections. Veteran resident and president of the Sunnybrook Veterans Council, Richard Radcliffe, will now give the final blessing.
Thank you very much for joining us today, wherever you are watching. On this very important day, I'm pleased to say a few words on behalf of my fellow veterans living with me at Sunnybrook. There's a tremendous history here at Sunnybrook, and I can think of no better place to be. The wonderful care and rich programming and quality of life are all provided by Sunnybrook and Veterans Affairs Canada. On behalf of the veterans living at Sunnybrook, I would like to give our heartfelt thanks for the exceptional care by every member of our staff, physicians, clinical teams, and for their tireless service ensuring our health, well-being, and safety through every stage of the pandemic. It is my hope that the youth of Canada will carry on forever the message and pledge of the phrase, "Lest we forget." This phrase is a promise to Canada's war veterans of 2 world wars, the Korean War, Afghanistan, and the Cold War. I will conclude this service of remembrance by reading a few verses of a poem written by a fellow veteran resident, and I'll cross my heart, written by the late James Matheson. But I make you this vow, as 2 veterans part. I'll make you this vow, and I'll cross my heart. I'll return in November, my time to remember. I'll kneel at your shrine, the privilege is mine. As trumpets on the hill blow our time away, I promise you, veteran, I'll return this day. Until then, I leave you, as time does fly, and one day in heaven is not say goodbye. Amen, amen, amen.
This concludes our Remembrance Day service for today. We encourage all of you to take a moment from time to time at other times throughout the year and remember the sacrifices that our veterans have made and the freedoms we enjoy because of it. Thank you very much for being with us for this very special day of remembrance today, lest we forget.
God save our gracious Queen, long live our noble Queen. God save